The restaurant was alive with quiet laughter, the clinking of silverware, and the soft hum of piano music flowing through the air like silk. James had been there for over 20 minutes, nervously glancing at his watch for the 10th time, adjusting his tie that didn't need adjusting. The candles flickered gently between him and the empty chair across the table. Every second that passed made his heart sink deeper into the ocean of uncertainty. He had been on countless dates before, but tonight felt different. There was something about this one that had made him strangely hopeful. Maybe it was the way her messages had felt, warm, honest, unlike the others. Maybe it was because for the first time since his divorce, he felt something close to excitement again. Just as he thought she wasn't going to come, the door to the restaurant opened, and a woman walked in. The golden light caught her face just as she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, revealing a simple silver earring that glimmered faintly. She wasn't dressed extravagantly, just a soft blue dress and a nervous smile. But to James, she looked like the calm in a storm he didn't realize he'd been living in. She scanned the room, eyes landing on him, and walked over with hesitant grace. As she approached, James stood up quickly, smiling, his heart racing like a teenager's. "Hi, Emily," he said, extending his hand warmly. But she didn't respond. Her eyes flickered with confusion for a moment before she smiled politely and gestured for him to sit. James blinked, unsure. Maybe she was just shy, or maybe she hadn't heard him properly in the noise. So he tried again, louder this time. "I'm James. It's really nice to finally meet you." She smiled again, gentle, apologetic, but didn't reply. Instead, she took a small notebook from her purse, wrote something quickly, and slid it across the table to him. It read, "Hi James. I'm Emily. I'm deaf. Thank you for meeting me." And in that moment, the waiter, who had been standing nearby, leaned in and whispered softly, "Sir, she can't hear you." James's smile froze. His heart seemed to stutter. "She's deaf?" The words echoed in his mind, colliding with surprise, guilt, and something else, something tender. He looked at her again, really looked. Her eyes were soft, watchful, curious. There was a grace in the way she moved, a quiet strength that filled the space words usually did. For a few long seconds, he didn't know what to do. Movie camera, if you believe in kindness, love beyond limits, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Hopeful Stories. Your support helps keep these real, emotional stories alive. James took a deep breath, his nerves turning into something gentler. He picked up a notebook, wrote, "I didn't know, but I'm really happy you're here." Emily smiled, this time wider, warmer, and something in that smile unraveled him. The conversation continued with pen and paper, slow but sincere. Every word felt deliberate, honest. James found himself slowing down, listening not with his ears but with his eyes, with his heart. She told him about how she lost her hearing at 12, about how silence had once felt like punishment but had slowly become peace. He told her about his recent divorce, the loneliness that had crept into his life like an uninvited shadow. They laughed without sound, shared stories without voices, and yet the connection was louder than anything he had felt in years. When the evening ended, he walked her to her car. She signed something quickly with her hands, then wrote, "You're kind, James." "I had a good time." He smiled, heart aching in a way that felt beautiful. "So did I," he wrote back. That night, as he drove home through the sleeping streets of Chicago, James couldn't shake her from his mind. There was something about her, the way she looked at the world, as if it spoke to her in colors instead of sounds. He had met hundreds of women who could talk endlessly but said nothing. Emily, though silent, had said everything. Days turned into weeks, and they began meeting more often. Coffee shops, quiet walks by the lake, late-night text messages that felt like whispers between souls. James began learning basic sign language, slowly, awkwardly, but every time he tried, she smiled like he had given her the world. And maybe in a way he had. But beneath the growing warmth, a quiet fear lingered in James's heart. He worried if he could truly be part of her silent world. Sometimes during dinner, when the restaurant got noisy, he'd catch himself missing the flow of spoken conversation, missing the ease of sound. He felt guilty for it, but he couldn't help it. It was hard. One night, after they'd watched the city lights flicker on from the Riverwalk, he finally asked the question that had been haunting him. "Do you ever wish people like me could really understand you?" She looked at him for a long moment before writing, "No, I just wish people like you wouldn't stop trying." That sentence hit him like a quiet wave, breaking something open in his chest. It wasn't about understanding perfectly, it was about effort, patience, presence. And for the first time, James realized that love wasn't about how much you heard. It was about how much you listened. He started taking sign language classes seriously, spending nights watching videos, practicing in front of a mirror. When he saw Emily again after a few weeks, he signed "You look beautiful," clumsily, but she gasped in joy, covering her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. She reached out and touched his face gently, tracing his lips as if feeling the words he couldn't say perfectly yet. Life became a rhythm of small gestures and deep emotions. He learned to listen through her eyes, to laugh at jokes written on napkins, to feel silence not as emptiness but as peace. But fate, as always, tested them. One morning, James received a call from his company. He had been offered a promotion, one that required him to move to New York. It was everything he'd worked for, except now, it didn't feel like a dream anymore. It felt like a choice he didn't want to make. That night, he sat across from Emily at their usual café. He told her, wrote to her, that he might have to leave. She stared at the napkin for a long time before writing back slowly. "Then go. You deserve good things." He frowned, writing quickly, "What about us?" She wrote, "If it's real, distance won't break it." He reached across the table, held her hand, and for a moment, neither of them wrote anything. They just sat there in the kind of silence that said more than any word could. He did go to New York, but not for long. 3 months later, he was sitting in a boardroom overlooking Manhattan, surrounded by voices, ideas, and noise. Yet for the first time, all that sound felt meaningless. He missed her quiet world, her calm presence, her smile that needed no sound to be felt. That evening, without planning it, he packed a bag, booked a ticket, and flew back to Chicago. When he arrived, he went straight to the small art studio where Emily taught painting to deaf children. She was there, her hair tied in a messy bun, paint on her hands, laughing silently as the kids created chaos with colors. He stood at the doorway for a while, watching her, realizing he'd never seen anything more beautiful. When she finally noticed him, her eyes widened in disbelief. She dropped the paintbrush, ran to him, and signed furiously, "Why are you here?" He smiled, tears burning behind his eyes, and signed back, "Because I finally heard what matters." Her hands trembled as she signed. "What did you hear?" He took her hands gently and signed, "You." And in that moment, in the middle of the laughter and color and silence, their worlds finally became one. From then on, they built a life together that didn't need sound to be full. James continued learning sign language, even teaching others at his workplace about inclusion. He'd often tell people that Emily taught him what silence truly meant, not absence, but depth. They got married 2 years later in a small garden ceremony, where vows were spoken in signs and tears. The guests were silent, but the love between them was thunderously alive. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, James would sit beside Emily on their porch, watching the sunset paint the sky. She would rest her head on his shoulder, and he would think about the night the waiter whispered those words that once broke his heart. Now, he realized they hadn't broken him. They had opened him. Because sometimes, love doesn't come to you in words. Sometimes it comes in silence. And that silence becomes the loudest thing in your heart. Movie camera, if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Hopeful Stories. Your small support helps spread kindness, empathy, and hope across the world. Speech balloon before you go, tell us in the comments. What would you do if love came to you in silence? Would you still listen? And as the screen fades, the words linger. Love doesn't need to be heard to be felt.